Hey, this is Bair, and you are listening to Thunder Underground. Rock on!
Welcome to episode 288 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here. Jason's out this week, but I've got a great interview with Bair coming up here on this episode for you. Zach has a new EP out that just came out here a few weeks ago. He also owns the companies Disc Live and Venue. We'll talk all about all three of those things. It's a great one. We're looking forward to hearing this one back and getting this one out here for you. But before we get into all that, of course, I got to let you know who helps support this podcast every week. And that's our sponsors, who are MedFarm, a dispensary located right here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. 24683 East Highway 51. They're right off the highway. You can't miss them. You can check out their selection on leafly.com. Their website is medfarmok.com, and you can follow them on their socials at MedFarm on Facebook. That's PHARM, and Instagram is MedFarmOK. They're always running specials on their social medias, so follow them on there so you don't miss that. And one of their specials that is always running is that if you mention Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order, which is really cool. And on top of all that, 30% of their proceeds go to help build no-kill animal shelters, which is an amazing thing that is the very reason I believe you should frequent MedFarm over any other dispensary in this area. There's tons of them out here now, but who else is donating nearly a third of their profits to go to such a great cause? You can also give them a call or shoot them a text and place your order ahead of time, and then you can just go right through their drive-thru and pick up the order that way. I know that's something that a lot of dispensaries don't offer as well, so another great feature of MedFarm. So get over there, check them out, and of course mention our name for your discount. Hella Hot Sauce is a hot sauce company based out of the San Francisco Bay Area. They make small batch artisan hot sauces that are excellent, and I can tell you that from experience. We got ourselves a hold of some Florida Frank's Florida Heat. It's the collaboration they did with Florida Frank of Hatebreed. It is fantastic. It is extremely hot, but it is extremely flavorful, which is what you want. I'm not a big fan of sauces that are just hot to be hot. And hella hot sauces. Hot sauces are definitely hot, but they definitely have the flavor as well, which is what you want. Get on hellahotsauce.com. You can place an order there. They'll ship it to you around the country. And if you're on the West Coast, they sell them in stores out there, so you can pick it up that way. And of course, mention our name if you place an order. Sunset Tattoo is a tattoo shop located right in Midtown Tulsa. Follow them on Instagram and Facebook. Both of those are at Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. They've got a ton of pictures on there where you can check out all their work, and it's all great work. Jake and his crew have over 25 years of experience. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, and they are mother approved. So give them a call or shoot them a text or an email or whatever so you can set up a time to get over there and talk about what work you need to have done from Jake and his crew. And finally, DEB Concerts, a promoter based right here in Tulsa, Oklahoma as well. They've brought in a ton of great acts to downtown Tulsa, and they also book the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma the last few years. They've brought in acts like Last in Line, Snoop Dogg, Saxon, Warrant, Beasto Blanco, LA Guns, a long list. They recently brought in Phil Lewis doing an acoustic show, socially distanced of course, tables set up. The Ideal Ballroom has a system in place that pulls out 99.9% of all surface and airborne germs, which is an amazing thing that club offers that most do not. So you can get in there and feel safe. This October 23rd, John Karabi will be making a visit to the Ideal Ballroom to play an acoustic show. If you've never seen John Karabi, I urge you that you need to see him. If you're in the Oklahoma or nearby area, get out there to the show. If you're anywhere else in the country and he's playing, get out there and check him out. He's one of my favorite singers of all time. He, of course, was the voice of Motley Crue in the mid-90s. He also fronted the Scream the Dead Daisies for a while. He fronted Union with Bruce Kulick. He was in Rat, playing rhythm guitar. He's done a plethora of other things, and he's got a lot of great solo work. So get out there and check that out. That show will be opened by our friends in Rocket Science, who are a great band out of the Tulsa area. Get on debconcerts.com for ticket info, and you can also keep up to date that way on any of their upcoming shows to be announced or any of the previous shows that got postponed. And of course, we'll let you know as soon as we know. All right, now that we've got the sponsors here for you, I guess it's time to get into some talk about Zach. I'm not going to be too lengthy here as far as talking about other stuff. I know there's a few things going on, but Jason and I have several episodes recorded, so here in the coming week we'll probably delve into a few things. But if you missed last week, we had David Ellefson from Megadeth on talking about the album from his band Ellefson that's coming out here in just a couple weeks. We've got one coming up with Jeff Carlson from the Jeff Carlson Band. We've got one coming up with Joe Cotella, the lead singer for the band Dead. And then we've got one coming up with Mercedes Lander, who is the lead vocalist and guitarist for the White Swan, and of course, best known as the drummer for Kitty. That's very cool. I just recorded that one yesterday. And then we've got 4 more interviews scheduled in the next week and a half. So we'll be able to tell you about those next week. We don't like to announce things before they happen. You know, I feel maybe that jinxes things. Maybe it doesn't, because I've seen other podcasts and other people announce things way ahead of time and then they happen. But I just know in the past a few times I've went around telling friends or whoever, we've got so-and-so coming up, and then it falls through. So I'm just going to leave it at that. You know, we've got, like I said, 3 that I just told you about, and a few more next week we'll be telling you about as well. So be on the lookout for all those. If this is your first time listening, I appreciate it. Hit us up at thethunderunderground.com to find all our socials. You can listen to the podcast there. There's reviews, all kinds of stuff. We've also got stuff on YouTube that's separate from this podcast. We've done reviews of the new album from Napalm Death, which came out last week. We did a review on the new Metallica release, the S&M 2 Blu-ray as well recently, so get on there and check that out. That's at The Thunder Underground. But the subject at hand this week is Zach Bair. You might not have heard that name when it comes to music because he's relatively new on the scene as far as solo work goes. I know he's had bands throughout the years. He released a song called Rutherford Drive in the past year that's really good, and that's included on his EP Ordinary Girl that just came out at the beginning of September. It's got 5 other songs that hadn't been released yet. So you got 6 tracks. It's great rock and roll. It's the best way to describe what Zach's doing. Zach's been in the industry for a long time. He's had 2 companies going in the music business, one called Venue and the other called Disc Live. If you've ever been out at a concert and they say, hey, go over to the merch booth or wherever, and you can buy the concert you just heard. 15 years ago, that was on compact disc. I remember doing it I even mentioned it to Zach, for a show when the Cult played the Cain's Ballroom in Tulsa. And then I did it a few years later. I bought one when Tesla played Hot Springs, Arkansas. I bought the disc of that concert right on the spot, which, is a great idea that apparently he was the one that, revolutionized that. And it's done by obviously other companies now as well. And bands like Metallica and Pearl Jam do it on their own and sell them digitally. A lot of bands this day and age will sell them to you on a USB drive or digitally as well. But that whole idea was kind of pioneered by Zach and Disc Live. And he's also got another company called Venue, which we get into, which is doing some great things on behalf of artists. And of course, we talk a ton about his EP, Ordinary Girl. So let's just jump into this right now. Here's Zach Bair. said that you had limited time for music because of all your businesses. Like, what is it about now during this pandemic, obviously, that gave you the opportunity to make this EP happen?
Yeah, so, really, I guess a lot of the material in the EP, it's been festering for a long time. It's like you start reading a book and you you never quite get finished with it, and finally one fell swoop, you read the rest of it.
Right.
And it's almost like that. I started writing some of these songs many years ago, and when the pandemic hit, it was kind of a thing where our business and my main company venue involves recording major artists out on the road, and we had a big tour scheduled this summer with Matchbox 20, and that got put off until next year, obviously, with everything being shut down. And all of a sudden, I had not only to have time on my hands, but also kind of felt that it was a serious enough pandemic that you really didn't know if your ticket's going to be up or, your bandmate ticket might be up. And, this is what I would call a virus that doesn't discriminate in terms of, who it hits. So I started reaching out to some folks and reached out to Skid Mills, our producer, who of course has done some bands like Saving Abel and 12 Stones and Skillet and a bunch of other ones. And he had some open times because of cancellations and things like that. So, it kind of like all the stars aligned and the urgency set in for us to go in and get it done.
You mentioned that all the songs were songs you had a while. Were any of the songs like newer ones that you wrote this year? Or?
Yeah. So there's actually 6 songs on the EP.
Right.
The title track, Ordinary Girl, I wrote that a long time ago, and I'll tell you the story about that one in a minute. But the other songs, there's a song called Fight. There's a song called Black. There's one called The Great Divide. There's one called Don't Give Up. And then there's one called Rutherford Drive. Rutherford Drive, I actually wrote that last year and released that as a single, so we included a remastered version on the EP as a bonus track. And then The Great Divide is one that I also wrote recently. That one hasn't ever been released. Actually, none of these songs have really been released, but this is a more recent song in terms of songwriting. So really, the Don't Give Up and Black and Ordinary Girl were written, in the last probably 10, 15 years in bits and pieces, and finally put together on this EP.
Okay. I mean, all those 6 songs kind of range in style. Was that premeditated, or was that just kind of natural how it came out?
Somewhat premeditated. I wanted to, let me actually take a step back there. I mean, most of my songs lyrically have fairly positive messages, and that's true in the EP, except for the song Black. I mean, that's a little bit dark, but I did that on purpose in that I wanted to have, good rock songs with a range of some of them being a little bit more melodic, and then getting down to more brutally heavy like Black is. So that was a plan.
I also saw that that 20% of all the sales and streams and downloads are going to the American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, and that obviously plays into the Ordinary Girl song. Was that like something that comes from a personal experience, or is this just something you're trying to help get the word out on?
Absolutely, personal experience. So Ordinary Girl, I really, like I said, I wrote that song a number of years ago, and it's about a young woman who is considering suicide, and then she is, surrounded with love and support, and eventually decides that she, basically she's not an ordinary girl, but she's extraordinary, and decides to stick around. And that song really sat on the burner for a long time, and then a year ago, this past August, we lost a young female employee at one of the music venues that I own to suicide. She was only about 28 years old, and it hit everybody really hard, and it was just, it was a tragic situation. And at that point, I kind of revived the idea of getting Ordinary Girl, back to life, and kind of committed to getting it done. And even then, I didn't really have a time frame until the pandemic hit. But there's absolutely a lot of factual basis for that song. And not only that, is that it's National Suicide Prevention Month. We released the EP on September 1st to kind of coincide with that. And there is a lot of messaging around the song that we're trying to do in order to, bring awareness to the fact that suicide is a problem. And, we as humans need to be really observant of our surroundings in terms of other people that might be having issues, but we're not really aware of that because they're not putting off any outward signs of that. Right. So what I'm hoping to do is, raise some money for the charity and the research, and really put a message out there that says that this is a problem that we need to pay attention to, especially during a time of a pandemic.
Yeah, I mean, kind of like you just said, it's a perfect time for it this year because, everything that's going on, you got to imagine that there's a lot of people dealing with, losing jobs and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, not only that, is that, in quarantine, people have been cooped up. And, right. For the people that I know that are by themselves, they may not have any family or friends or anything that they would normally hang out with. It's extremely depressing to them. And those who are already in a bad mental state, I'm absolutely certain that there's been a rise in suicide because of this. And I don't have any hard statistics on that yet. I don't know if they exist, but I'm surmising that that's probably the case.
When you started putting these songs together last year, did you already have a band, or was that something you had to build once you decided to start recording and everything?
Well, I've played in bands for a long, long time. I'm not even going to tell you the number of years, but I've played in bands for a long time. And when I wrote Rutherford Drive in 2019, I was toying with the idea of really getting back into music, and because I've been on the production side and the music business side for so long. And I wanted to start putting my own stuff out. And so I brought in Daniel Dwight, who was a founding member of Saving Abel, and started our studio sessions at Ardent Studios in Memphis, and brought in another fellow by the name of Jeff Cobble as lead guitarist. And when we put the track down, I was like, wow, this is really magic. And at that point, and this was probably about, 2 years ago, I guess, we at that point decided to really put the band together and make a point of going out and doing shows and getting more material on tape, not tape, but you know what I'm saying. But yeah, so, it's a relatively new project in that, the four of us have only been playing together for a couple of years, but the foundation of the band is just so solid and so magical. And I mentioned my drummer, Jeff Ward, too. He's also from the Mid-South area here. But we've just got a great thing going. And, we were obviously hoping to get out and do some shows this year. We had some big stages booked, but the pandemic hit, and, here we are.
Right. Well, if it's next year or whenever it happens, is that something you're still planning to hopefully get out and be able to play some shows around the country?
Absolutely. When this pandemic hit, I kind of retooled the idea of, they were going to do a bunch of shows in the fall and whatnot, to now we're really focusing on promoting the record and getting people aware of, who we are and aware of the music and whatnot. So by the time the touring season rolls around and hopefully things begin to open up next year, we'll be ready to go, and maybe I can leverage some of the relationships I have in the music business side to get us on some shows.
Right. Well, besides doing interviews and stuff like this, like how do you how are you guys looking into promoting this EP since you can't get out and do the live aspect of it?
Well, I mean, it's really all it's all radio. It's all interviews like this one. I've done a little bit of TV and a lot of outreach on social media and through bloggers and literally grassroots type of marketing and awareness. And that's the only thing we can do right now until we're able to go out and actually hit the road and impress people with our musical prowess. Ha ha.
Right. Well, I saw your video that you did, like your cover of "Rockin' in the Free World," and it's kind of I've thought this about other songs recently, but it just kind of hit me when I was watching the video and the imagery you had in it. It's funny how that song's over 30 years old, and songs that are even 50 years old have as much relevance right now as they did when they were released.
Yeah, it's absolutely point on. I mean, that song is absolutely reflective of the times we're going through right now. I've honestly never seen anything like this in my lifetime.
Right. I mean, that song and the video, everything also showed you as a multi-instrumentalist. Has that always been that way, or did you kind of learn separate instruments over time?
I guess mostly a little bit over time. I mean, when I was really young, I learned how to play piano by banging on my mom's piano, when she had that at the house. And, throughout high school and college, I played trumpet and jazz trumpet. And along the way, got exposed to Led Zeppelin and, Boston and Aerosmith and all those bands. And I picked up a guitar, and really from then it was no looking back at that point. I didn't get serious about it for quite some time, but by necessity, when I first put my cover band together in Houston, I played bass because I could sing, and it only had 4 strings, so it was easier to play than a guitar. And then after firing about 18 different guitar players over a 2-year period, I finally decided, like, okay, I'm going to pick up a guitar and I'm going to learn how to play, for real, and hire a bass player. Maybe it'll be a little bit easier to keep. Well, it really wasn't the case, but at least I learned how to play guitar.
Well, when you started singing, was it something that came naturally, or did you have to work on it to get to where you're at now?
I came pretty fairly naturally, I guess. It wasn't something that I really had to work too hard at. I think probably more than anything, I've worked on technique, so my range is a little bit better. But I really never took any vocal lessons or anything like that. I mean, honestly, I've tried to take guitar lessons in the past, and I get bored in 5 minutes. So it's all pretty much self-taught, or in later years watching YouTube over and over again and learning stuff like that.
Well, you kind of mentioned Zeppelin and Aerosmith, but is there anyone, whether it be one of those two or someone specifically, that this is the person that made me want to be a guitarist or made me want to be a vocalist?
Believe it or not, the guy that made me want to be a vocalist, I was obviously really young, but Brad Delp from Boston.
Okay.
The dude just had such an amazing voice, and there's nobody been able to replicate him stylistically or anything else. And then I like guys who can wail. I like Jeff Tate. And I like Steve Perry. All these vocalists that really, really can sing. Those are probably all of my influences, and had a large part of me wanting to get into music. It was really, strangely, there was really one experience in particular that finally pushed me into wanting to play professionally. I had gone down to Houston to see a friend. I'd never been to Houston before, and at this time I'd never been to a city that big. And my friend was like, all right, we're going to go out and, check out what's going on around town. You're going to love it. You're not going to want to leave, blah, blah, blah. So he took me out to this little, it was a hot area of Houston called the Richmond Strip at the time, and there was a club that was called the Pig and Whistle Pub, and we went in there, and the place was wall-to-wall people. This was in the middle of the summertime, and it was packed, and there was a band that was playing. They were kind of a Beatlesque type of band, more rockin', original. I can't remember the name, but everybody was dancing. There was people dancing on the bar, and the vibe was just so amazing. And I was like, you know what, this is what I want to do. That was the moment that I decided that I was going to really start pursuing music on a more professional level. And literally, like 2 weeks after that, I packed up and moved to Houston.
Oh, nice. Well, speaking of your company's Venue, talk about what this company does to help. I know I read that you're helping with artist compensation as far as music getting played in public spaces and that kind of thing.
Yeah, so we have a technology called Soundster, SOUNDSTR.com for anybody listening. Okay. And Soundster is a technology that we've been developing and about to go out into beta testing. And the basic premise of Soundster is that when it comes to how the performing rights organizations like ASCAP and BMI and things like that allocate royalties to music that's played in public spaces like bars and restaurants and cafes and even radio, they use what's called a general license. And a general license means that, they'll come into a bar and say, okay, you got to pay X amount of dollars and you'll have the right to play all the songs that are within our catalog. And if you don't, then we're going to sue you, and each instance of copyright infringement could be $150,000. This is kind of the method that they use to try to get bars and restaurants licensed. Obviously at first blush, the problem with that is that it's really like kind of a shakedown, and nobody, especially in these businesses, likes to deal with that. But the bigger problem that's on the flip side of that is that because there's no existing technology out there, they don't know who the general licensing revenue needs to even be allocated to. So, for example, between ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, and GMR, the four main PROs in the country, hundreds of millions of dollars a year are collected in these general licensing royalties. And because there's no mechanism to track what's being played in bars and restaurants, a lot of this money ends up going into a big slush fund that really nobody knows what happens to it. Some of it goes to the top touring artists or top radio hits according to the algorithms that they have. But at the end of the day, they really don't go to the deserving songwriters and publishers that deserve it. A good example of this would be, let's take the song Mustang Sally, which is probably played in every, crappy hole-in-the-wall bar in the country on a given night.
Yeah.
And chances are, because the algorithms are not taking into account older catalog songs, and certainly whoever wrote Mustang Sally, and I can't remember who it is, but they're not, on a top 10 touring list and certainly not played on the radio all the time. They're being left out. There's a lot of folks just not getting paid from this. So what Soundster does is it's a cloud-based architecture with a custom piece of hardware that goes into these different types of businesses and monitors the music and identifies the music, and then identifies, who the songwriter and the publisher and the PRO and all that is, so that there's an actual audit trail to tell exactly what song was played, when it was played, where it was played, so that there's now ammunition for the songwriters and the artists to go back to the PRO and say, hey, my song was played 180 times last week at Joe's Bar and Grill. Why am I not getting royalties for this? And that's one aspect. And the other aspect is now you have something that the bar owners have in their hand that says, hey, we're only playing 10 songs of your entire catalog. Why do I need to pay a $2,000 a year license fee when I'm only playing 10 of your songs? So it's a problem that has been around for a long time. It's a 100-year-old problem. ASCAP's been around since 1914, I think. And like everything else, technology has the ability to change this and create a more transparent mechanism so that everybody that needs to be paid is going to get paid, and then so that actually pay for the music like they use, and nothing more than that.
So Soundster is it's not meant to replace ASCAP or BMI. It's just kind of in addition to help the artists get what they deserve?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, what we hope is that these, and there's, I have an opinion on this, but there's not been a lot of motivation from ASCAP and BMI to create the transparency because they have this big pile of money
Right.
that they're collecting. But the entire industry is going that direction. So what we hope is, that eventually ASCAP and BMI will become clients so that they know where the money is going to go to and can make sure that their constituents are taken care of.
Okay.
And we've had some interest in some of the PROs and having that discussion. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we're building a platform though that will have the capability of do direct licensing. So they wouldn't necessarily have to have a PRO if they wanted to go direct. But of course we don't handle all the same things that the PROs do in terms of royalties for radio and things like that. Excuse me.
Okay. Well, kind of on a similar subject, do you think, there's lots of talk about, streaming royalties as far as the artist or the writer not getting nearly compensated for what they should off streaming platforms like Spotify? Like, do you think it's too late for something to be done about that?
Oh, no. There's initiatives now even to create a better mechanism. And, the streaming royalties are ridiculous. It's, you can get 1 million streams and make a couple $100.
Yeah.
So it's not fair, and that whole structure needs to be rethought. And I know there's a lot of initiatives going on like that. So I don't think it's too late. I think you're going to see more and more that the labels and the artists are going to be speaking up about the money that's being left on the table, and that's true in this general licensing space too. The thing is that many artists don't realize that they're just not getting paid for stuff that's performed in a bar or club or a cafe or whatever. And if they're not aware of the problem, they're not going to they don't care. But we are going to try to make people aware that there is a problem, and then I'm sure there's going to be some big artists that are going to come up and say, hey, wow, I had a hit song and I should have had, $500,000 in royalties and I don't have anything. So I think there's a movement in the industry as a whole to become more transparent and to become a much better revenue driver for the creators.
Right. Well, I know another one of your companies is Disc Live. Is that like a separate company, or is that under the same umbrella as Venue?
It's actually a separate company.
Okay.
But we have an agreement between the two companies to work together. But Disc Live is it's known as the pioneer in instant live recording. My former company, we acquired that company back in 2004, I guess. The first big outing was with the Pixies. And for those of you listening, what we do is we record the shows, and you can walk out with a high quality product like a CD or a USB drive, or with the Set FM app that we have with Venue, a digital copy of what you just heard. But Disc Live has gone through a few iterations over the years. For a while, we aligned with EMI, and we were known as Abbey Road Live, and then we rebranded back to Disc Live Network in 2012 when EMI was purchased by Universal, and we've been doing it ever since.
Okay. Yeah, I remember, I think the first time I bought one, I don't know if I meant to look to see if it was a Disc Live product or not, but it was from like 2005 or 2006. I saw the Cult live and bought the disc on my way out. And I just, even then, 15 years ago, it just kind of blew my mind that you could do that, that quickly.
It probably was us. I know we worked with Ian Astbury when they were doing Doors of the 21st Century in that time frame as well, which was really, really cool.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like back then when we started doing it, it was a little ahead of the time, and the record labels were afraid of, we were going to be competing with them, for sales and whatnot. But now you flash forward, you have all the labels and the artists looking for new ways to create revenue we're way ahead of that curve. Like I mentioned, we were supposed to go out with Matchbox 20 this summer, but that's been now put off till next summer. But what I feel like is going to happen is because of the pandemic, there's going to be a big push to do a lot of this and add revenue to make up for the loss of revenue this year.
Right. Being someone that's involved with, several different aspects of the music industry from behind the scenes, like, how do you feel that helps you on the musician side of things?
Well, I definitely can say 15 years ago, I would not have had the relationships I do now. I think it absolutely helps, simply because of the fact all the people that I know now the different managers and the different promoters and label people I know, it gives us an edge, I guess. I mean, we have a lot more opportunity than maybe a completely unknown band, simply because I can say, hey, I've worked with some really cool people and we've done good work and we have a good reputation. So all of that, helps when you're in the music industry. As you know, at least some of it is a matter of having those connections and being able to leverage those to move ahead. And all the years I've worked in the music business, I've never played the quote unquote I'm a musician card until recently. But I'm going to do it now, and I can tell you there's nothing more exciting than being on stage and recording some of these artists that I've worked with, and working with them, especially ones that you grew up listening to. And but then the real deal is getting up there and rocking out yourself, and that's, I absolutely live for that.
Right. I got a random question for you. You mentioned, Brad Delp and everything. Like, what do you think the greatest debut album of all time is? Because Boston's definitely in the conversation.
Well, it's definitely in the conversation. That's a tough question. I'm trying to think of any mind-blowing records, and honestly, I think in my mind, it probably is that Boston record. It was just so good, and Tom Schultz recorded that in his basement on his back half the time. I mean, he had a back injury. Who does that? Right. It's crazy.
Yeah,
I think that's,
yeah, everything about that album is just perfect from beginning to end.
Yeah, it's just a great record. I mean, it's hard to top that. I mean, yeah. I will say that. I mean, the first Alice in Chains record was really, really good, and Stone Temple Pilots, and I mean, I'm a '90s guy too. I mean, I love all the '90s music, and I love, believe it or not, I love the Jim Blossoms.
Okay.
That New Miserable Experience was a brilliant record too. There's a lot of, I really appreciate not just the production value, but the songwriting value, as much as the musicianship.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, man. Well, I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me on. And, man, well, I really, really appreciate it. And, thanks for supporting me and the song. And thanks for doing what you do.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. Thank you. There you go, Zach Bair. A huge thank you to Jody Best of Best Bet Promotions for her continued support of this podcast. And, of course, a huge thank you to Zach for taking some time out there to talk to me about everything he has going on with Disc Live, Venue, and, of course, his solo work there with his brand new EP, Ordinary Girl. So if you haven't checked it out yet, you can hear it everywhere you can hear music. Apple Music, Spotify, YouTube. Get on his page on Facebook, follow him on Twitter, all the socials. And of course, tell him we sent you. Check this thing out, buy some music, buy this EP. It's great music. And like we talked about there in that thing, he's got other stuff you can check out on his YouTube channel. He did a cover of Rockin' in a Free World, which was really cool. So yeah, a huge thank you to Zach, and I really liked hearing about the stuff he's got going on with Venue and the help they're doing to try to help artists get compensated better. So hopefully that keeps trending in the right direction like it seems to be doing, with at least streaming payouts have, started to move up a little bit. They're still not anywhere near where they should be for artists and songwriters. But hopefully the work Zach's doing to help, get artists paid through ASCAP and BMI and all that stuff, is a step in the right direction for everything that has been going on in the industry for several years. So that's kind of a topic, that has come up throughout the years in this podcast for the past 5.5 years that we've been doing this with a ton of different artists. And everybody's got a different opinion on, streaming platforms and the way things are working these days, especially artists that, have lived in both eras. The artists that worked pre-streaming, pre-Napster, all that stuff. And of course, even newer artists, have their say on it as they should. But hopefully everybody can get compensated the way they should. And I, for one, even though I'm not an artist myself, appreciate everything Zach and his companies are doing. So once again, thank you to Zach. Check out the EP Ordinary Girl. If this is your first time listening, I greatly appreciate it. We've had, like I said, 287 previous episodes. Just last week we had David Elfson from Megadeth. He's been on here twice. We've also had Chris Broderick, formerly of Megadeth. James Lomenzo, who is formerly of Megadeth, who's also in Black Label Society, Pride and Glory, White Lion. He now is the bass player for James Fogarty. I've seen him live with Fogarty a few times. That's great stuff. Speaking of the Fogarty style of music, we've had on Damon Johnson and Ricky Warwick from Thin Lizzy. And of course, Damon Johnson from Brother Kane, and both of them from Black Star Riders. Damon Johnson's been on here a couple times, and you never know, he might be on here again soon. I've also had on members of Kiss. Gene Simmons, Bruce Kulick has been on here. Glenn Hughes, the mighty Glenn Hughes, who I would put on the Mount Rushmore of rock and roll vocalists. I would put him up there as one of the 4 greatest vocalists in the history of rock. I had the honor of talking to him a couple months ago, so check that one out if you haven't. We've also had on Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard and Dio, John Connolly of Seven Dust, Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses, Jason Todd, formerly of Shinedown. We've had on members of Saving Abel, Trapped, Warrant, Europe, Great White, Tesla, Avatar, Killswitch Engage, Clutch, Prong, Typo Negative, a long, long list that keeps getting longer and includes many artists that we know and love, and I'm sure many artists that you know and love. So just dig back through there. Check out something you missed. You can listen to us, like I said, on our website, The Thunder Underground. You can listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard, like Spotify, TuneIn, Mixcloud, SoundCloud, all those great things. Follow us on YouTube at The Thunder Underground to check out our videos. We'll probably have one here again in the next week on an album review as well. We've done recent reviews on Metallica, Havoc, Napalm Death. Follow us on all our socials. Click like. Anything you see us post, if you just like it or comment or share it, that's an easy, free way that you can help us out. Same goes for Zach Bair or any artist. Because you've seen it all, how the people talk about how artist pages on Facebook work. They don't get viewed by everybody that likes the page, so all you got to do is hit share or like or comment, and as soon as you do that, it helps spread that post around. It helps get it out there, so we would greatly appreciate that. You can also hit us up on Patreon if you want to help monetarily, or buy some of our merch at thethunderunderground.com. We've got t-shirts, shot glasses, koozies, a few other things, magnets, stickers, so hopefully have some more stuff here for you to check out here in the coming months. But yeah, once again, we've got an episode coming up with Jeff Carlson of the Jeff Carlson Band, Mercedes Lander of Kitty and the White Swan, Joe Cotella of Dead, and like I mentioned up front, we've got 4 actually scheduled here coming up in the next week and a half. So next week we'll be telling you about those, and they're all pretty exciting. They include 2 of them that are scheduled are people that have been on this podcast before, and 2 of them are artists that have never been on this podcast. So really looking forward to that. All right, I'll quit rambling and let you all get out of here. I appreciate you listening and checking this episode out. Once again, check out Zach Bair's new EP, Ordinary Girl. And a huge thank you to Zach. A huge thank you to Hell Hot Hot Sauce, Sunset Tattoo, Med Farm, and DEB Concerts. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.